Loud enough. Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to our eRequesting TDG for the 20th online meeting. I'll be your chair today. So we don't have an approval of minutes for this meeting. That will be deferred until the next meeting. And then we will get those circulated along with the minutes from this meeting today. So because of that, we also don't have any actions to come out of the last meeting as of yet. Again, they will be circulated and updated as of the next meeting. So we'll make sure that gets all done as soon as possible, so we're all in line for the next one.
Stuart, if you think you're not showing your screen, just wanted to call out if you are, we can't see. Oh, actually,
I can see it.
Oh no, I can see it now. Sorry. Yep.
Now I can't.
Sorry.
No stress.
That was like really, really delayed. My bad.
It's all good, no worries. So yes, we'll get all of the meeting minutes circulated and posted on the Confluence, and we'll get those actioned at the next meeting. And we do have the next Connectathon coming up. That is the 20th to the 22nd of August. I believe the tickets are live on Eventbrite now. If anybody has a link to that handy, if they could pop it in the chat. If not, we'll get that
I'll put those in there now.
Fantastic, thank you. So I believe the tickets are live and good to go. That will be in Brisbane, 275 George Street, 2-day event or 3-day event even. Starting off, we have the FHIR working group meetings, the AU Core TDG and the eRequesting TDG on the 20th. The 21st and the 22nd will be the AU Core and the Sparked eRequesting tracks for the actual Connectathon side of things on those last 2 days. There is a note here to say that if we don't have any tickets available on the Eventbrite, email events@hl7 and they will wait list for tickets. So that's all good to go, and we look forward to seeing you all there, starting at 9 a.m. on the Tuesday. And I believe...
I would interrupt, Stuart. Do you mind sharing your screen again? We can't see it.
Is it gone again?
Yeah.
Going to be one of those days today.
That's good.
Yell out. Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Great, thanks.
There we go. That's better. It's a little bit more interesting than just me talking about nothing at all. So now we can see what's going on. So just to recap, that's the Connectathon 20th to the 22nd of August. Tickets are live on Eventbrite. The FHIR working group, AU Core TDG and eRequest TDG will be on the 20th, with the Connectathon kicking off 21st, 22nd for Core and eRequesting tracks. There is a wait list if you do miss out on tickets. Somebody will put the link to that in the chat. Approach to consensus, draft for comment, working trial use. Angus, is that yourself or was that Brett? Sorry.
Sorry, I missed the question.
We've got the approach to consensus slides. Is that
this was gone through in the last meeting? This was going to be, I think, a very quick. It was just going to be a very quick recap, maybe by Brett if he was there, just to, because we did go through it in the last meeting.
Yeah, we're going to do the very quick version. So basically, we are aiming to produce a draft for comment, which means that we are really just getting to a point that's workable. Later on is a working trial use version, which is essentially set for people to implement in anger. So it's basically saying that these decisions are really a stepping stone into being able to run Connectathons and work on the standards content. So yeah, don't be too precious is the short description. So basically we're looking at profiles. We'll be looking at ServiceRequest as our key thing, which we are continuing on our discussion with that. So here's our waves. We are in wave 1 still, but hopefully completing that and getting onto wave 2. So we're just finalizing our cardinality and must support positions in terms of saying that these elements are important to us, and then on to more detail about each of those in terms of terminology use and any constraints or data types that are of interest. Here is a big timeline. So this is to put the pressure on to say we need to get through this to hit some of our timelines. Obviously we're going to try and prioritize things so that we have something meaningful to hit the August event with, but obviously we need to move through wave 2. We're in wave 1, finishing that today, hopefully on to wave 2, and then we'll get into more detail on actors and obligations around the data that we have defined as being in use. I particularly enjoy the tidal wave. That's just fun. Thanks, Christy. Yep, so basically we're looking at service requests now. So I think we went through this last time, so we're continuing on that discussion. And that will do for that. So we basically, again, we're looking at must support and cardinality. So really just whether elements are important is the must support flag. It's a key element to achieving our use cases, and the cardinality is really just say we expect this to be mandatory, or we expect that it may be optional depending on the context. So that's probably good for that. And then wave 2, we're going to get into more detail. So we'll actually get down to exactly which terminology is in use, any discussions around that, try and get that down to a level a bit beyond just saying the element exists. Actually say, is there anything else to say about each element in terms of constraint? And that will probably do.
Perfect. Thank you, Brett. So Angus will be going through some more details on those waves for us today. And he'll give us a look through some of the content, and hopefully we can make some decisions today surrounding some of what will and won't be included and what is and out of scope. And hopefully we can get some actions done on that. So Angus, whenever you're ready, you have the floor.
Yeah, can I share screen?
Yeah, I've made you co-host. You should be good to go. I'll just drop mine out here.
Yep. Right, can people see wave 1?
Sure can.
Yep.
Right. These things on my way. Right. Okay, so we're still in wave 1. We've got about 4 more service request properties to cover in wave 1, and then we can start on wave 2. I did want to say we're going to try and time box the discussions on each element this time. So we want to try and spend some time on each one, but if we can't, if it gets hard and we can't make a decision, then sort of just move on to the next one and maybe not make a decision, just so that we can keep progressing forward, and we'll have to come back to some of those. So we're going to try and limit each one to roughly sort of 10 minutes. I'll describe it and then we can talk about it for a bit, but at the end of sort of 10 minutes, we kind of need to decide whether we're going to vote and make a decision or whether we're going to just put it aside and move on. So the next one we had, where we left off last time, is service request note. So notes, any notes and comments made about service request. So this is pretty much akin to clinical notes on many of the fields we see today, many of the requesting screens we see today. It's basically a free text area for the requester to communicate anything ad hoc. So in FHIR, it's 0 to star. It's annotation. Annotation is really just, it ends up being text. You can do some sort of formatting in there, but basically it's text. We had many requirements come out of the clinical design, the design days. We haven't listed them here, but we've listed the item numbers. I just touch on, there is this thing called supporting information where atomic supporting information could go, but that's a different property to this. This is just note. This really is just free text. Tell us what you want. So the proposal we're putting forward is that for pathology and diagnostic imaging is that it's must support. So you have to address this. You have to, if you get clinical notes or notes about the request, you have to provide them. And of course, the consumers have to do something meaningful with them, not just ignore them. Cardinality is 0 to many, meaning you don't have to provide it. But of course, if you've got them, then you need to provide them. I guess, is there any questions about this? If not, I'll ask if anyone would like to propose that we vote that this is must support and and the cardinality is 0 star. It's optional to provide.
Danielle, here I'm happy to motion that we accept that proposal as must support with cardinality 0 to many.
No,
I'm
I
happy to
would
second.
be- Yep.
Andy second. I see there is. Yeah, David Heathcock had your hand up.
Just a quick question. Under what circumstances might you have more than one annotation? Is this something that builds over time, or
No,
so you could use it as to track a history of notes or something like that? Or
so this
More
is in
likely.
yes, in the context of one request. So it wouldn't build over time. It is you're placing a request that might have many items on. Or, well, it gets into the grouping thing. Really, it's just for this requesting event. It's something you want to tell us. It's not compounding up for the patient. Like, sure, someone could create a system that collates them all across many requests, but really all we're talking about here is for this requesting event that you're doing right here now. What would you like to say to us? One to start.
Just curious.
You can use it just for a logical separation. So it enables you to separate a series of notes that you might want to, say, logically separate. It may be that when you receive it, you concatenate them all together, but at least it gives you that flexibility.
Yeah, just checking in there as to why it's many rather than just one.
Yep. No, right.
So we actually have an issue with the DI spec. It's got comment as well as clinical context. So it would enable us to map those two DI concepts to this field and keep them separate, even though there's no way to distinguish between the two concepts.
All right, shall we go to the vote?
Sure, sounds good. So a vote on the motion by Danielle for must support on ServiceRequest.note. That should all come up on your screen now, and we'll just let some votes fall in.
And cardinality. So
and cardinality, sorry, yes, which is 0 to many in this one, or 0 to star. All right, lots of involvement in this one. So 40 of 49, 82%, we'll call it there.
Not that it matters too much. I don't see the vote. I don't see the vote myself. Add one for me.
Maybe not as co.
Yeah, everyone who's listed as a co-host has no opportunity to participate in there. Usually we try to limit the number of people who are co-hosts so that you can vote. You can verbally add if you wish, because you are eligible to vote. Only the chair is the person who cannot. So if you want to call it out, it can get added to the numbers.
I vote. I'm in.
Which is affirmative, negative, or abstain, Angus? Which one?
Oh, affirmative, sorry, affirmative.
Cool.
Well, I've just made a note of that, Angus, as well, so I will add you to the tally. But it seems to be overwhelmingly.
And Steph has also, who's a co-host, has just popped in the chat as affirmative as well.
Steph, motion 1, no problem, thank you. I will add those. So overwhelmingly affirmative with 83% of the votes, 17% abstain, 0 negative.
Right.
Can you call out do you have the actual numbers on that, Stuart, for the minutes?
Most certainly do. 34 of 41 votes in the affirmative, 7 of 41 in the abstain, 0 negative votes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angus.
Yeah, I'll move on to the next one. ServiceRequest.insurance. So insurance plans, coverage extensions, pre-authorizations and predeterminations that may be needed for delivering the requested service. So for us here, and so this is the base spec from FHIR, 0 to star. It can point to a coverage resource or a claim resource. We certainly had people in the requirements out of Spark saying that and information to support billing in both pathology and radiology. I think the top of the list thing here is somewhere that bill codes can go, whether this is for Medicare or DVA or private. It gets a lot more complicated than that, but at this stage, we're really just pointing towards, do we need a link to something about billing or insurance? So the proposal here is for pathology and radiology that it's one-to-one. So you must supply something called diagnostic request coverage. So it's must support, must do it, must provide it, must consume it in some way or not reject it, one-to-one. We're not going to get into so it's a FHIR coverage resource. We're not going to get into the detail that goes there. It's really just agreeing that we do believe we're going to need billing information. And in later sessions, we're going to have to go through the coverage resource as to what that is. At a loose level, at a high level, bill codes, something in there is going to tell me this is Medicare or DVA or private, and possibly other stuff in there. Danielle, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely all for it being a minimum of one. I just wanted to check on the why one-to-one, because as we talked about, like Medicare, DVA, private, some people might have like Medicare and private, and we wouldn't want to be able to put both of those.
I don't. My view is when we request pathology radiology, we pick one. We're like, I'm not saying patients don't have private insurance and many things, but for this request, the doctor, when requesting, is selecting or suggesting how he would like it billed. He's picking one.
Okay.
Michael?
Thanks. I'm concerned that without knowledge of what's in coverage, and I just had a quick look and there's some mandatory stuff in there, that we might be must supporting stuff that we can't support.
I'm not worried about that because of the capability around dealing with that in reference. I honestly don't think that will end up being a problem for us. But I guess if it does, we can reevaluate this one.
Yeah, a similar view that, if there's an 80% chance we think we do need billing stuff, then maybe do this. If we get to coverage and we all go, no, this is just, we can't do this, then we could come back and say, well, no.
Because you can just represent a Medicare, like Medicare. You can just represent this person has private health insurance using coverage. It can be that simplistic in the base resource.
If we don't point out here, then we're kind of going, billing's just fallen out of scope because there's nowhere else to put it, right? This is kind of our bookmark that says we're going to have to do a whole lot of sessions on billing. Ken, do you want to comment?
The nuance, because let's say the clinician is requesting this, is responsible for the request, and so you said they are choosing which billing process. They're not choosing it; they're actually doing it with the patient. So this is an acknowledgement that a discussion has been made with the patient regarding how this episode is being billed. It's related to financial consent. What actually happens once the provider is doing it is a separate issue, because the doctor and the patient may decide something which isn't rebatable. But as far as I'm concerned, this is an acknowledgement of the discussion that the doctor and patient have had regarding the expected billing for this episode.
Thank you, Ken. That's a much better description than I gave. Andy?
I too, I guess, are questioning the limiting this to one-to-one. And the only reason is that, given the stage we're at, whether we have that it's actually a necessary constraint at this point in time, or whether we could move to making a one-to-one at some point when we understand better the uses that may or may not be made of this. I just wonder whether we would become too restrictive too soon, and that there are situations where the patient and the provider don't necessarily have prescriptive or agreement on one particular funding approach, and they wish then to maybe allow for multiple. I'm sort of grasping at straws, but I guess I'm not comfortable that we understand various uses, in that we would make life hard for ourselves if we did allow for two, even though it may never be used. It would seemingly be better to do that with experience than maybe at this point in time.
So, I mean, I'm definitely happy to motion like bus support. Totally agree with that. Minimum of one. And I'd be happier to motion one to many at this point in time. We've got a couple of people in the chat that are sort of suggesting that they would be okay with supporting a motion of one to many at this time, noting we can come back if that turns out to be a problem. I see David, your hand's up.
Yeah, sorry, I think it's actually none to many, because the requesting doctor may not have an opinion on how the service provider builds it. I think it has to be many because sometimes you might have tests where the patient has multiple Medicare-related tests, but then there might also be some tests that are not funded by Medicare on the request. That's quite common, as I understand it.
Okay, shall we change this then to 0 star for now? Must support 0 star. I'm not entirely against that. I'm still in flux myself, but I
Just
think
have two hands up there. Just on, I think it's probably on the cardinality. Caleb?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree there's going to be situations where the provider doesn't know or doesn't have an opinion, but I think that might be able to be represented in like an unknown value that can be filled out. So it might be better to have that still represented as unknown rather than leaving it blank, which could be interpreted as either not knowing or like forgetting it or missing it.
Yep. And Heath?
I guess a lot of the existing paper forms have the checkboxes down the bottom at the moment. So I think in the particular use cases we're dealing with, it is a common practice to tick one of those boxes. And the other thing is just to direct us back to the DI spec again. They have an item that is termed billing guidance, and again going back to Ken's sort of representation of it, although he was a little bit stronger with it being consent, but it was kind of along those lines. This is some level of guidance on how you should bill, and it's not the final decision on how to bill. It's not providing all the information about how to bill. It's just more of an indication on, we would like you to bill this through Medicare. Nothing too much more complicated than that.
Chat seems a lot happier with 0 star.
The problem with 0 to star is then we're going to have recipients that are having to deal with lots of bits and pieces, and they're currently dealing with only one. Like, again, I know I'll keep going back to the form, but the form only has one option. Well, I guess that's not quite true. They could tick multiple boxes, but
yeah, or they could tick none. but I think our experience is in the 80-90% that they're ticking one of them.
And in the system, you would pick one of those. Like when you actually fill that out in your system, I think that's why we need to be careful of is the existing systems that are going to receive this. If they currently only support one. Yeah, I do understand not wanting to lock it down, but we also need to be implementable. This is a downstream IG that we're dealing with. It's not an AU core situation.
Yeah, I'm immediately thinking for Sonic, like, if this is many, I'm going to have to create like a cascading rule, right? Like I have to go, if Medicare is there, I'm going to do Medicare. If it's not there, I'm going to do this. If it's, because it's not going to be, we have to pick one, and it's not like we're going to have a person sitting there checking every time. It's going to be a logic rule that says, if you got this one, use it. If you got that one, use it. So that's how I see it realizing for me, at least in the near term. Ken.
Just in relation to that grouping question, like a request has multiple tests. So each of these, the billing instruction for each individual test rather than for the whole request.
Yeah, I purposely skipped over that. So we are talking here at the individual test level.
Yeah.
But we have talked about a grouping level too. And I think, at least in my view, today it is one setting for the whole request, right? We don't have granular like Medicare for this one, private for that one, DVA for this one. Even though conceptually that might be a reality, today there's just one decision made for the whole request. And I think we sort of fudge through any complication that creates. This would be granular per test,
yeah,
but how that's realised, I struggle.
No, I'm happy to accept that the default position is that if one's apply, if there's only one bit of information provided, it applies to the whole request. But this gives you the capability at test level to which our doctors often need, to say we want you to, and there are. Well, let's just say the doctor can choose which test to bulk bill and which tests are privately billed. And some doctors ask for that. There is actually a Medicare regulation against that. But that's a separate issue to what we'd aim to do.
Absolutely. I think this gives us the granularity going forward, like to improve the situation, but today's systems seems to be a grouper. Daniel, I'll go to you, but I will remind everyone we're now 10 minutes into this one. So really, I think Daniel will be the last comment.
Wanted to put in my support for 0 star. 0 because I think we do need to consider edge cases like John Doe patients, car accident, and also internationals coming to Australia who won't have necessarily either private or Medicare at this point in time. So just a few areas that we should consider, even though they're edge cases.
Wouldn't that be private? I think it's what we would class as private. I mean, send a bill to the patient. It's
still covered under coverage. So self-pay is covered under there, as is, other things like that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to support a 0 to many. I still think I'm still partial to 1, but to move forwards, if someone wants to motion 0 to many, I would affirm it.
I'm the same. I'm happy to motion a 0 to star. I too more lean to the 1 because that's where we are today, but I'm happy to see how this goes.
1 minimum or 1 maximum?
1 as the proposal on the screen. It's more. That's what we do today. That gels nicely with what I do today. But I hear the discussion and I can see we could possibly have many. We're going to have to make some.
So who wants to motion?
I'll move 0 to many.
My support.
Yep. We have a seconder.
I'll second.
Andy.
Okay, thank you. I know, Lulu. One moment, sorry. There we go. Okay, so this is a vote for the current motion, which is a proposal for must support on ServiceRequest.insurance, but we're actually voting on a cardinality of 0 to many. Anybody that can't vote, please drop in the chat and I will record that result or just yell out. Thank you, Steph. Angus, did you have a preference on this one?
Yeah, I was trying to write.
Okay, no worries. Oh, no. Thank you. All right, I'm going to call it there. We're at 91%. Thank you. So for the scribe, Motion passed with 81% in the affirmative at 34 of 42 votes. We had 2% or 1 out of 42 in the negative, 7 out of 42 abstaining, or 17%, plus Steph and Angus in the chat makes it a total of 36 out of 42 in the affirmative.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next one. So the next one is encounter. So service request encounter, it's a reference again, an encounter that provides additional information about the healthcare context in which the request is made. So in the international spec, it's 0 to 1. It's a reference to an encounter resource. From the sparked requirements, we had, as well as the original requester and information to support billing. So they're calling out information to support billing here in the context of encounter, and maybe I'm guilty for this, is because at least at Sonic, the billing is the encounter type is critical in our billing decision. So inpatient, outpatient, emergency, really inpatient, outpatient. So I don't know if saying that needing encounter simply for billing, it's true, but encounter is so much more than that. So I'll just point that out. The proposal here is must support, yes, cardinality 0 to 1 occurrence. So just to talk about encounter, so this world sort of fans out into a lot of stuff. So the class of patient, especially in hospitals, if we're in a hospital situation, which is not in our scope, then this is where your whole ward, bed, location of patient stuff is kept. The admitting doctor and things like that fan out from encounter. So there's a lot there, but remember our scope is public diagnostic requesting. So that somewhat minimizes it, but at least for me, there is this problem of patient class.
Could it include telehealth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the short answer. Absolutely. That's how you record them. You can do them through telehealth in Encounter.
Yeah, I guess in a GP scenario, Encounter is like the patient's walked in for a meeting with me, a consult. So that's the encounter. So anything about that goes here.
Yeah, virtual encounters are supported by AU Core.
Yeah, I think it has a far more relevance in hospital scenarios. I know, at least in the Sonic scenario, as I said, the only thing we're really getting out of here is that you are an outpatient or an inpatient. And you could even argue if our scope is just outpatient stuff, then that's kind of assumed. But we with Sonic and Genie, we used this and we used an outpatient code as just the class. Anyone got any? See too many hands up. Dan?
Just wondering when they're like, under what circumstances wouldn't you provide an encounter?
It's a good question. I personally would like to think that I got an encounter that at a minimum told me that they were an outpatient.
Yeah, so I'm sort of thinking it should be at 1 to 1.
You want to object to that? I'm kind of with you, Dan. I would like to think I got one. Not that this is V2 in HL7 version 2 messages. PV1 patient class is mandatory in every order.
Can I frame that for the people on the line with systems? If this was made mandatory, will that cause any problems for you? I guess to supply that.
Yes, Sanji.
It will be a problem. We have certain test requests that can be made without an encounter. So we cannot always provide a reference.
But
I was thinking of like self-referrals.
Oh, okay.
So Sanjeet, is that a virtual? I don't fully understand the INR scenario, but would that be classed as a sort of a virtual thing?
It's a test. You don't need to open an encounter. You can just request it from without opening a clinical session.
But who's requesting it? Is it self-requested by a patient?
I mean, it can be requested by the practitioner without even being in a consultation session with the patient.
So it's kind of a bit like a repeat or a prescription being given without needing to actually visit. It's along those lines. You just need another request so I can go continue with my INR regime. I don't know, Angus, if you...
Yeah, I still, from my view, is it's still in the context of the original encounter. Like it's like it's like, how is there a test if there's no I suppose it's the definition encounter is difficult, isn't it? Because I sort of think of it as, if there was no encounter, then how does it happen? Like, is it just because you're spinning up another one on a schedule? There's the formal idea of an encounter, like the patient has booked to come and see you and we create an encounter, but there's just why are we doing a test? Something was encountered. Like, to me, there's this minimum thing of they're an outpatient, like they're not a hospital. There was something that triggered this request being created.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the actual workflow is. Does the patient ring up and say, I need another request, and the receptionist organizes it?
Even if it's because you had a booking 3 months ago and they decided that every month you're going to have a test and this is the 5th month, then you could sort of say, well, it's because of the original encounter. Like, there's something happened. You don't just create tests for Blow Joe in the community because you felt like it. It's because some encounter happened.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Angus.
I mean, it's a bit like the virtual encounters as well. Like, you've got to have a relationship with an existing doctor, surely, to be able to get one of these tests ordered.
I'll go. Kathleen's got a hand up, Rogers.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I would be thinking exactly what you were saying, Angus, that even if it was a repeat or it came in as a result of a phone call, it should still link to the previous appointment as a bare minimum, because you wouldn't be asking for something to be done if they're not a current patient or have had a recent appointment of some description.
Yep. Andy?
I think this is quite difficult to discuss without understanding what would be required in the encounter. At the encounter, everything's optional. So at the end of the day, it is only there to represent the interaction between a patient and a healthcare provider. It doesn't have to hold anything additional. So we kind of, I think, need to keep in mind that encounter specification can be as broad or narrow as we need. And as Angus kind of indicated previously, was really just distinguishing between outpatient and inpatient foundation of requests. So I'd be more willing at the moment just to go, if you got one, if you use it. I don't mind it becoming mandatory, but then we would need to be careful about then what are we anticipating is required from the encounter, and it might be worthwhile putting up AU core encounter just to give some context.
I'll try and do that. And Ken?
I think we can leave that to some degree to the wave 2 decision for this one. Like, going through, what does that really look like?
Yeah, but if we're making it mandatory, for instance, you've got to include one, then that I don't think we can
Mandatory
make
just
that.
says we want something, and then it is up to us in wave 2 to decide what is that something.
Right, but the something is likely to be AU core encounter, and if it's not AU core encounter, then
Yeah, I still think that's wave 2.
I think if that's the case, we would have to push it. I think if we were proposing a mandatory, we would have to push it to a wave 2 decision then, where we understood what we're actually requiring.
Just, I agree. The initial request was an encounter, and the complication is that, let's say the initial request for 6 INRs is done as an outpatient billed to Medicare. It doesn't allow for, you know, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th episodes of that request to be done as an inpatient. That's against Medicare rules. So you can't mix the original encounter with other encounters for a repeated episode. Everything has to relate to that original request. So they can repeat those 6 requests as outpatients, but none of them can be inpatients.
Heath, we're running out of time to.
So we need to make sure that we're not implementing a interoperability specification to support health policy. That's making decisions on whether this is mandatory or not based on some possible future policy is problematic. We need to be considering what existing systems can do. Now, if the encounter is just a class, then that's pretty easy. But if we're actually going back to a specific instance that was the original reason why an INR was actually requested, then I think existing systems will have problems. So my thoughts would be leave it at 0 to 1 for now. As we go into the next wave and we work out exactly what it is that we need in the encounter, whether it's just a class or whether it's more an exact instance of something, including things like reason for encounter, etc. But for now, let's just basically say it's must support and we move forward.
That sounds like a motion, Heath.
It's a motion. So as presented here, 0 to 1 must support.
Any second?
I'll second it.
Was that you, Andy?
It is indeed.
Lovely, thank you. All right, so I'll launch a vote. The current motion is, as displayed on the screen here, it is must support on service request.encounter with cardinality 0 to 1, 0 or 1 occurrence. Anyone that can't vote in the chat or yell out on the mic and I will record those. Ooh, okay. So we'll call it there. So for the minutes, we have 76% in the affirmative at 32 of 41 votes, 3 in the negative out of 41 at 5%. We have 8 abstaining out of 41 or 20%. So motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. Where are we? Reason code. So service request reason code, an explanation or justification for why this service is being requested in encoded or textual form. This is often for billing purposes, may relate to resource referenced in the supporting information section. 0 to star, it's optional, can have many. There's an example reason code there, but really it links to a set of codes as to why you're doing this. This element represents why the referral is being made and may be used to decide how the service will be performed, or even if it will be performed at all. Use codable context.text element if the data is free uncoded text, as shown in this example. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Yep. So we did have requirements from both pathology and radiology to reason for requesting imaging. So this is similar to clinical notes, but this is more like codified. I'm doing this for this reason. Ken Sakaris probably would be salivating at this one. To me, this is where in the future decision support reasons would go. If decision support had a codified input which it used to make a decision, then the reason you picked this test, that codified information could go here. The proposal is must support 0 to star. So if you've got it, you must provide it. Must try not error if you receive it. Cardinality 0 to star. Don't have to. It's optional to provide. Questions about this one? David Heathcote.
Curious to know have there been any discussions about where this data comes from in terms of a reference set? Is it a SNOMED thing? Is it related to RSS and PITUS, or RRS, sorry, and PITUS, or where are we getting it from?
Very good question. I don't know. I don't know of where this set is. So that's a wave 2 discussion, but it's a very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. So no, we don't. Top of my mind, no, we don't have one. That would have to be worked through.
If that's a later question, that's great. But we will need to
later
solve.
Question, but I think some of it might be coming from the AU eRequesting data for interoperability that has recommended terminology for items.
Great.
At a practical level for me, I look at this and I think this is great going forward to have it. In the meantime, I'm going to do something like, because we don't have something in our list to input this, but I would be putting this in clinical notes. I would be in my clinical notes, I'll put a section called, reason, and I'd list off the codes descriptions. That'd be my poor man's implementation initially. But going forward, I see great benefit of this. It's where we can get codified, reasons why they're doing this.
I'm happy to motion. To motion to accept this proposal. Oh, all right. Michael's already in there. I think that was you, Michael Osborne.
Seconding. Yeah, I'll second.
Okay.
We have a vote, Stuart. I don't know if Stuart's there. Have we lost him? A lot of silence.
Have I just been talking to myself that whole time?
I think you have.
Angus, you wouldn't have seen it. Yeah, the vote come out. Yeah.
Amazing. So just to clarify, I apologize. Current vote is on ServiceRequest.reason code. It is must support cardinality 0 star or 0 to many. If you can't vote, yell in the chat. This was motioned by Danielle, seconded by Andy. Me, myself, and I were having a lovely conversation.
Hang on. I think it's seconded by Michael Osborne.
Yep.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry. Seconded by Michael Osborne, not Andy. But we'll call it there on the public poll. And we've got the 2 votes in the chat. Perfect. So for the minutes, motion carries. We have 33 out of 38 or 87% in the affirmative plus the other two. So both positive. So 35 out of 38 for the affirmative, no negative, 5 of 38 abstaining.
Excellent. Well, we've got through wave one. That's a celebration. So wave two. So wave two's now really just going back over all the wave ones we've done, or a lot of them, and we're now just changing our context about how we're thinking about them. So before we were really trying to just decide whether this is sort of the cardinality, whether it was mandatory or not, and the must support. Now we're looking at those properties from a lens of what shall they be? So for instance, David's question before, like what's the value set for reason code? We're starting to discuss that sort of thing. What's the value set behind a status? I've got a slide to even talk about it. So the data element data type, whether it's a string, a Boolean, some list. Choices, are all data types choices or relevant? Specific data type profiles exist or needed, like when we point to patient, which patient? AU core patient. Code proposed, so what value sets bind to them? References, are all the target resource types required? So requester, can it be a practitioner role or device? We have to make that decision. Suitable target profiles exist for any other constraints. So we'll jump into the first one, which we tried to get a simple one to start with. So the service request authored on. So put the definitions in here. I don't know if we did. We didn't. So this is the date and time that the request was created by the requester. So where the definition is that it's a date and time. Cardinality we've already decided was 1-to-1. Consider required at least one. So we're thinking we require at least year, month, day, but not time. Sorry. So we don't have, so this is the proposed vote, is it? So propose both. Yeah, so we're proposing. So yeah, so I guess the proposal is that authored on will be a date time, won't be a string, won't be a Boolean. It'll be a time, date time. It'll be 1-to-1, and that it is year, month, day only. No time on it.
Cardinality there just to remind us.
It is just to remind us because we have made that
It
decision.
is just
The last dot point is the proposal. I think just going forward, I think in each slide we've got proposal at the end is what we're voting on. Yeah.
So the proposal, so it's not even about choosing date time. The proposal is just saying let's have a precision that requires at least up to a day.
Yes,
that's
and I think that's
the proposal. Okay.
Yes, and I think that's because in this one, the FHIR says it is a date time. There's no discussion. It is a date time.
Yeah, it's to prevent you just putting a year in.
Yep. Thanks for that clarification. Yeah. I certainly support this.
David, you had a question?
Given this is probably system generated, is there any reason why we wouldn't put a time in? I can imagine that time with multiple requests coming and going all the time in large systems, timestamp is probably useful.
Well, can I just say, because when we restrict, what we're actually saying is we'll reject everything that doesn't have a full timestamp. Is that a quality control we need to apply? If not, we shouldn't go that far.
Just curious. I mean, I don't own any of the systems. I don't have that skin in the game, but I'm wondering whether the level of granularity of down to a day is going to cause anyone any trouble.
I would expect backdating, and yes, basically request dates are manually entered. It might default to the current time, but they can be readjusted.
I think what this is critical, this element is critical for, is this becomes Medicare service date. So when we bill to Medicare for a patient, we're collating all the services we did on this date, not time, but this date. If there's another date, then that's a separate billing event to Medicare. And if we get two requests for the same patient on the same day, we can only bill them as one, right?
Right. But Angus, in your system, if you were getting, potentially a duplicate request coming from one doctor for one patient on the same day, does the time that it was authored matter to you, or are you taking care of that order of service on your end?
I must admit, in what I've done, I take care of that with the resource, other parts of the resource. So the resource version ID, the sort of technical level, I go, no, this is just the same resource I saw before because it's the same version, right? And so that's not even at a time level. Like if I got two separate independent resources for the same thing with the same time here, I'd probably treat them as two separate things because they're given to me as two separate things. I wouldn't even dedupe them because rightly or wrongly, that is literally someone giving me the same order twice.
Cool. Thanks.
Ken?
That was what I was wondering as well, whether the registry takes care of the, because we do have that. We have e-orders and the doctor changes their order. I'll add this test. And how do you know which is the most recent one rather than I've deleted this test? You've got two requests which are identical except for one test that's changed. Which is the newest? Either the request has to take care of that with a timestamp, or the registry itself has to take care of that. So if you don't have the time here, then all registries will have to take care of the timestamp.
Dan?
Yeah, I've just got concerns about not providing a full timestamp in terms of processing through various time zones.
Yes, that's a good consideration. It does say required. So we are saying required at least, aren't we? So we're not rejecting a timestamp. I guess people are suggesting that we make this mandatory, must have hours, minutes, seconds or something, and therefore time zone. The time zone one's an interesting angle. We've got more people. Daniel?
Yeah, just real quickly addressing the one of distinguishing between requests that have been updated. That is the purpose of the business identifier that we had extensive discussion about last time. And that is why it is, in my view, important. It shouldn't be put down to timestamps to distinguish between updated requests. It's not good practice in any interoperability IT environment that I've worked in.
I agree. I don't think we should ever be using this to deduplicate or there's other mechanisms to do that. You mentioned one. I think the resource ID, the version of the resource all do that. I wouldn't suggest that anyone is concluding that two things are the same thing because the authored on timestamp is the same. That'd be a really poor way of doing it. But in saying that, I'm kind of also not against time. It's just more information. It's not hard to give. Roma?
I think that the time is very useful, and I think it's very sensible that we recommend that time be given where it is available. But I think particularly if you're considering cases of historical data, any kind of interoperability with manual systems rather than automatic ones, then we should allow systems to not reject year, month, day, but we should ask systems to provide time if they have any ability to do so, even though we understand that we lose potential date time transitions, particularly for nighttime hospital tests or anything like that. But I think that's necessary for the edge cases for people who have more complicated situations. So I like this.
Yeah, it's a good point that existing ordering systems out there, I would suspect many of them just have a date field or provide date. So they could be difficult for them they'd have to change their ordering screens. So I mean, I'm happy to put forward that required at least
Sorry,
year, month, day.
just
and
before we Just before we go on, Steph raised an interesting question. There's a last updated element. Would that overcome the updated challenge here? Because if authored on is just when it was created, and then there's an last updated element, would that overcome that challenge?
Yep, good point. So a FHIR resource, every single one of them has a last, like when the resource was last updated. It is not when it was authored, it's just when any system touched it.
Only if it's required, though. It's not mandatory.
Well, isn't it required if it's in a?
No, and it's server assigned. It's not when it was created on a client. It's not when the actual request was actually written. So completely different.
Yeah, it's really resource
don't even
management.
Think about using.
It's resource management. Yeah,
but that's they put it forward because it's version management, right? It is a solution to version management. Like it's akin to like the version number. They're not trying to suggest that is authored on time.
Where you've got the same resource in multiple servers, they'll have different last updated times.
Yeah.
So let's bring it back to this now, so we don't go down a rabbit hole.
I do like the idea of and I don't know how to say it. Like, yes, the minimum is this, but we kind of would suggest time, like provide time if you can. You don't have to, but be nice if you did. I don't know how we say that.
And the general rules is one step further is if you provided time, you provided time zone. So basically this would be the minimum if all you have is a date. But if you have a time as well, then you need to go down to at least, I don't know, minutes or whatever makes, etc. But we can go into detail around that. But definitely a time zone then has to be provided. So it's really date only or date time with time zone. But certainly recommendation on the time if you've got one.
Yeah. So I think this proposal is good. I don't know how we enhance it down the road to say time would be nice as well.
I'm willing to move that we accept this proposal.
I'm willing to second it.
All right, no worries. I'll push that out now. So that should have come up for everybody. So the current vote is for service request authored on as displayed on the screen. The definition of date time as explained by FHIR and a cardinality of 1-to-1. Stick your votes in the chat if you can't see the vote poll.
And the motion is that we will constrain this to require at least up to a day, so year, month, and day.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. Okay, voting seems to have calmed. We'll call it there. Angus, you abstaining?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. For some reason, my message went directly to Brett. I didn't mean to do that.
Cool. Wait,
confirm he's positive.
Did that work? There you go. One vote for me.
There we go. Cool.
One positive vote, that is.
Fantastic. Okay, so for the minutes, motion is carried. We have 33 of 36 or 92% in the affirmative, 0 negative, 3 of 36 abstaining, plus 1 2 affirmative from Steph and Angus. So a total of 35 affirmative, 3 abstaining, 0 negative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. So the next one in wave 2 is service request category. So definition, it's a codable concept in FHIR, so code or text. Cardinality, where we already decided on was 1.star, and the proposal must be one of, won't read the number, either laboratory or imaging. They're SNOMED codes, so it has to be one of those. But additional codings are allowed. So we're saying 1.star because it must at least have laboratory or imaging in there, But you can put other stuff in there as you feel free to put in there. But we really need that. Basically, this is that switch that says, hey, that's a pathology one. This one's an imaging one. So we're suggesting that the minimum is those two codes must be in there, and you must pick one.
Well, Michael Osborne in the chat has already motioned this proposal, seconded by either Andy or Jane. Andy was first.
I love it.
Damn it, they beat me to it.
Yep, got no hands up.
I do want to understand something here, because there is a test like for first trimester screening where you do nuchal translucency, which is a imaging request, and you do blood testing at the same time, and you have to have both to complete the request. So does this mean you can direct that to either the laboratory or the imager? As long as you include one of those, the request will go through, but somehow it's going to get to the other entity.
I see this more, Ken, that we wouldn't entertain one thing having both. Like, I would suggest that this is the requester directing it to either a path lab or a radiology lab, not that they're sort of sending it. Not that it's being. How do I describe it? It's one or the other. I don't think we are suggesting that one request is made up of some imaging and some pathology, and somehow it gets distributed at the other end. This is not necessarily concretely, clinically, that this is a pathology test and that is a radiology test. It's more the requester saying, I want this request, regardless, to go to pathology, or I want this one to go to imaging. It is that requester picking radiology or pathology when he starts to make his order.
I mean, it'll work, but it's just going to be awkward. It's a rare circumstance, but it will be awkward for that circumstance.
And I guess to that, sorry, just directly on this, I don't think we want to say that. I think what we're really trying to say here is not to be that restrictive yet, is to say that at least one of those codes must be present. But we're silent on saying, no, you can't have both. And I think that's the right thing to start with.
We does say must be one of.
Well, then it says additional codings are allowed.
So it must be one of these, and then you put imaging as the additional one.
Sure. We're not going to.
I think the wording of "or" is confusing.
I think that proposal should say, like, one code must be lab or imaging, and then additional codes are allowed.
So that was our intent when we wrote this. Our intent was that you wouldn't have both lab and imaging, but you can have others, but you can't have both of these.
So the intention is to put an invariant on the profile to say that it is invalid to have both.
That was at least the intent when we talked about this. Michael, you were there. Want to comment?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to clarify Ken's comment. So this is on an individual test. Could an individual test be both imaging and pathology, or the order,
good
which
question,
has multiple tests in it?
Yeah, so again, it's a grouping question. So as a group, it needs to be both, but as an individual test, because a test for, let's say, a first trimester screen is a grouped request for a single test, which might be the PAPA blood test, as well as for the single test, which might be the nuchal translucency imaging. And so each of those could have either imaging.
Yeah,
so so it can be at the test level, it wouldn't be both.
And we're only talking at the test level here. So there is one service request per test here. So that's where it would be one or the other in that context.
All right. Good.
So do we need to make that first up point a bit more explicit, that it is an exclusive or? So it's one of laboratory or imaging, but not both. And something like what Danielle said, other additional codes are allowed or something.
If that's the proposal, then yes.
Kimberly, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about I guess, the use cases for adding an additional code. It seems at the moment like you potentially could be adding any SNOMED code as that additional code. So just querying whether that needs to be constrained somewhat, I guess, for the sake of data quality to make sure that the additional code is relevant to the service request.
In response to that, so category is a lot of how we drive machine processability. So you see it now also in V2 orders where you might put the specific type like hematology, chemistry, those sorts of things. And in imaging, that's where you're going to put things around maybe concepts of modality in category, because that's the best place to put that there to drive that kind of workflow.
But also
So
vendors might have their own ways of classifying things as well for searchability and all that sorts of stuff. So I don't think we want to restrict it to things, but certainly people can do silly things, but we also don't want to restrict them to do things that are useful to their systems.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So back to Heath's question, do we need to change this somehow so that it is XOR?
I think someone just needs to state the motion really as XOR clearly, and then we can vote on that.
Because it will require a specific constraint if that needs to be enforced, Angus, in its current state. So it will actually affect the profile.
So who's going to motion?
Oh, there was a motion. Do they want to entertain changing it?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we need to change the text to exclusive or, because from what I read, that is actually the definition of exclusive or.
I think at the test level it is exclusive. Yeah, it was the group level that I was talking about.
I think the proposal's clear enough. I think you're being a bit cheeky to say, "Oh, I'm going to add the imaging one as an additional" when you've got the first point. Like,
so did we say someone had already motioned?
Yeah.
Yep.
It was
Michael Osborne motioned the proposal as it is.
I would second the motion as it is.
Michael has left the meeting. Danielle, does that change anything?
No, it doesn't, because he motioned and he's put in the chat that he will be affirmative if it is exactly as it is. It only changes if we make amendments.
No problem. So Michael Osborne has motioned for service request or category as a codable concept, cardinality of one to many, with the proposal being that it must be one or the laboratory procedure or the imaging SNOMED code. Additional codings are allowed as well. And then there was further in the chat to say that the additional codings, there's no definition to say it must be SNOMED either. Is there anybody that wants to second that?
Andy's already seconded.
Perfect, thank you. So I'll push this out then. So that is live. Anybody that can't see, pop in the chat, yell out over mic. Okay, votes seem pretty stable. I'll call it there. For the minutes on the poll, we have 27 of 32 in the affirmative, plus 1 positive from Angus, 1 positive from Steph. So a total of 29 out of 32 in the affirmative, 0 negative, 5 of 32 abstaining. Motion carries.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Did you miss Michael's vote in the...
I think I did actually, yes. So plus another affirmative for Michael, please. Thank you.
Well picked up.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. We've still got another 10 minutes or so, 12 minutes. So the next one is service request subject. definition. So it's a reference to another FHIR resource. In the international spec, it can be to patient, group, location, or device. Cardinality is 1.1 has already been decided by us. And the proposal here is that it will be patient only, so that it won't be a reference to a group or a location or device. Subject.reference will be 1.1. So that's just covering off that you can create a reference, but then just put text on it that says, oh, this is a reference to Bob. So we're saying, no, it has to be a concrete FHIR reference to another resource. Specific profile, and that the profile it will point at is AU core. So not just the international patient, but an Australian AU core patient profile. So I guess there's certainly, we've had discussions before that, can we request things on non-patients? And whilst that's possibly true, I think in our release 1 scope, it's not our agenda. It's not to say that in a release 2 or later, someone might put up a strong argument to say, we want to request things on devices, but I don't feel it's part of our R1 scope. So that's why we're going patient only. Question, hands up. I'll start with Dan.
I'm just not familiar with the time frames between R1 and R2. How long after release 1 do you think we would get to R2? Is that in the charter?
Yearly. So they're yearly updates, roughly.
Right. And within the year, do you think the general public will have to or should deal with devices? Because I think that is an industry that will take off.
So coming back to our original scope on the use cases we agreed to put in R1, our use cases are only patient-centric now. So I think that's what is also being modeled through the eRequesting data for interoperability. So I think that needs to come back. I do think that has to be an R2 discussion and go through and do the workshop on the use cases. What does that scope look like, and have that modeled through that?
Okay, accept that. Thanks.
Heath?
I should have raised this yesterday. The second requirement for reference being 1-to-1 is problematic, I believe, because you may not actually have a specific reference to, you may need to reference a patient by their identifier. Now, this is getting complicated for probably some on the line, but I think we need to remove that constraint at the moment. It's definitely the intent I'm happy with, but I think we need to have a constraint to ensure at least a reference or an identifier in the patient or the subject reference.
I know where you're going. Yeah.
I've just popped a link to that in the chat as well for people in the data type.
Yeah, so this is this idea that you can point to a patient not by a FHIR resource reference, but by, say, an MRN number.
Or their IHI.
So just to rephrase what you were saying, Heath, is if you think we might need to allow identifier, then I would suggest that what the amendment you're suggesting is actually that subject needs to be either reference or identifier, like one of those two is mandatory.
I think it needs to be must support, not necessarily 1-to-1, but that's a whole nother conversation.
But yeah, were you not also stating that reference is ideal, but the second fallback that's acceptable is identifier?
I don't know if it's ideal. I think it's more likely to be an identifier in a distributed environment, but I think we need to think this through further. But at the moment, the current constraint is too constraining.
Yeah, it's not clear what we're trying to stop.
If it was changed to reference, at least a reference or identifier, I think we could accept, but it is starting to get complicated for those on the line.
Yeah, I do think yesterday when we spoke, our intent was we were trying to cut out display, right? We were trying to stop someone just going, oh, this is for Bob. We didn't talk about identifier, but I think our intent was that you point to something concrete, and maybe we're a bit premature just saying reference. The other hands up, I'll go to Brett, I think.
Oh yeah, just on the device support. It doesn't, just because we don't have it in our spec, doesn't mean you can't implement it in a system. It just means you can't assert this particular profile, right? So it's more that you know, it will be a stepping stone. And just on this using identifiers, I think it's hard because there's some requirements on data, right? For knowing some patient details. So having an identifier only doesn't guarantee that. So because it depends what that logical identifier is referring to. So I guess that's a choice as to whether you need to supply the patient details as part of the request every time, or you can just refer to something that you know is sufficient. Because yeah, so that's just it's almost a scope question as to whether we're going to support that case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would really struggle with you just giving me an identifier. Like what if you give me an IHI? What am I going to do with that? I'm going to do what? Like, I can look in my system and say, do I know about this patient? I don't. What do I do now? Like,
my comment was on that typically what we might end up doing then is requiring that the service request sends along the patient details they have, right, in the patient, so that you can serve as matching. And that would be why we're requiring that there. And because unless we're defining a very tightly closed system, which we understand the implementation at this point in time, identifier is not enough. It doesn't meet our requirements on patient matching.
Dan?
Yeah, the patient reference itself doesn't work in that case either, because in the distributed system, patient ID in one is different to a patient ID in another.
But what you would require if you meet AU core is it also has birthday, name, and gender. So when you've got those together, those are like the requirements then around giving you, this is the information I have with that patient to assist in matching and identification.
But what the identifier is doing is basically saying, I'm sending you this request. I'm expecting you to know this patient based on this business identifier, such as an IHI. I don't know what is the resource identifier that you know that patient by, but I know that you have this patient with this IHI, and it's your job to resolve that reference identifier. Now, again, this is getting overly technical and implementation specific, but I think we just need to make sure that we're not locking it down to a very specific technical solution.
I don't understand
otherwise,
how that
there has to be a query to find out what the ID is first for the patient before I could submit an order.
I don't understand, Heath, how that's part of our use case, that you're going to, I'm kind of thinking across the country, how am I to expect some other organization to know this patient by just simply an identifier?
And that's what we got IHIs for, right? So,
but IHIs.
But even to verify them, you need to supply more information.
Yeah, I can't just go find out someone's name because I have their IHI.
And
no,
I
even
don't
in
necessarily
patient
have
matching, you need at least 3 pieces of information to do patient matching.
but if in that transaction you've got your version of the patient, okay, and you're setting this to a national eRequesting repository or some version of it, distributed one, you're basically, as part of that transaction, have to create that patient. Now you've got a duplicate effectively of the patient. There is no global patient resource. Oh, this is a conversation that needs to probably be taken offline, but I feel that we need to loosen this constraint before we otherwise before we can take this motion, or we're going to defer this topic? I didn't foresee this yesterday. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ken, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, it's not on Heath's point. I do generally agree we need to knuckle down on AHIs, but my point, I have too much knowledge, so I've always found the exception to the rule. So there is a request which involves two patients or two individuals, and that's a needle stick. So the person that the needles hit this health worker as well as a patient. Now that would imply, I don't think that's a problem. It would just imply that there now two requests are required. One, which is a needle stick donor, which has its patient identified, and one which is a needle stick recipient, which also has its patient identified, but it may not actually be the patient. It may need something like a IHI or identifier. So I still I feel guilty that I bring up these exceptions, but I think that I think they test the system.
Absolutely, Ken. We need more people like you that know things deeply.
In the interest of time, we're going to need to defer this discussion until the next meeting. So we might hold comments there, and then we can have another chat about this at the next TDG.
No, fair enough. Yes, we are right on the last 20 seconds. So perhaps we don't vote on this and we come back to start here next time.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. But we definitely got a lot done today, so we very much appreciate that. Thank you. I'll just bring up the other slides and we can close this meeting out for.
Do you want to take
the day?
Want to take control of sharing?
Bring that over onto this one here. It's going to have a heart attack, isn't it? Pause. Yes, great.
Thank you, everyone. We got through lots of decisions today. That was much better than we got a bit bogged down last time.
Fantastic. So thank you for that, everyone, today. Yes, thank you, Angus. And thank you to everybody else that commented and for those that participated in the votes where possible and put in the extra opinions and led to these discussions that we had. So we will defer this last one until the next meetings. The next meetings, we only have 6 to go until the ballot for comment. So the next meeting will be the 25th of June, where we will continue this discussion. I'll get all of the minutes and the votes out for this meeting and for the last as well, so that we can keep an eye on everything and everybody knows where we're up to, and we'll get everything prepped for the next meeting. Unless anybody has anything else that they want to add really quickly, then we'll call the meeting there and we will see you all at the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
That's right.